Singing?
No, you're singing.
Well, I was just having a little.
Okay, thank you all very much. So the first on will be Hawarun Hussain. So if you'd like to go, I will tell you when you've got 30 seconds left.
Thank you, Tom. Hello, everybody. I was looking at everybody's faces. It's so nice to see people, which is make a nice change. Not only are we in Bradford in lockdown, but I'd hurt my ankle, so I'd physically been sat at home for a couple of weeks now. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I think everybody who knows me knows I'm very, very passionate, and I'm hoping after this evening, everybody who doesn't know me will know me a little bit more and understand my passion for the green agenda. And I totally appreciate that we're all here because we're all passionate about the green agenda. I want to say a little bit about myself, so, you know, bear with me. I'm a woman. I've got 2 young boys. I say young, they're not that young, they're in the late 20s. So I suppose a mother, you always think of them as your kids. And I sort of lived and grew up in Keighley and then more recently in Shipley. So this Bradford is my city. Got involved with Greens a few years back, was a Green councillor for 14 years. And I believe I bring a lot of experience of being a councillor, but also a year of municipal year of being a Deputy Lord Mayor of Bradford. I won't go too much into detail. I'll wait for the questions and maybe feed into that. My professional background is in public health. So everybody who's watching public health in the news, that's how we feel at the moment. And I sort of understand, or I'd like to think I have a slightly good understanding of what's happening with the COVID situation at the moment, which is impacting on all our lives. I suppose my passion for the green agenda and my formal training is so interlinked in public health. My formal training in public health is so interlinked in terms of the prevention agenda, in terms of doing, you know, early on, not waiting to mitigate, not waiting to deal with a problem, actually looking at the problem before predicting it and, you know, preventing it. And so I almost feel like I live and breathe prevention, sustainability, and looking after our population. I think I feel really passionate about this West Yorkshire Mayoral opportunity because it gives us Greens an opportunity to put ourselves forward and show how innovative we are, how progressive we are, how we can see and, you know, go forward with innovation, with, you know, resilience, with understanding of what the future looks like and make it better for West Yorkshire. As I understood it, the government declined the Yorkshire as a whole bid, saying it'll be too big and too powerful. And actually, West Yorkshire isn't going to be any less powerful. It will, in terms of the governmental areas, it's quite a small, but for us, it will have a massive impact in our lives. So I feel it's really, really important that we have a good say. I think also this gives us an opportunity and a platform for us to discuss the green agenda and have that saying and actually, you know, target and almost talk to our non-green people, because there'll always be climate deniers. There'll always be people who don't see our point of view, who can't see the future, who are just too entrenched in their lives for whatever reason, or, you know, as I say, are too conservative, can't see beyond their nose. So actually, you know, it's giving them, it's having that communication skill, having that opportunity, and having that to almost, I want to say affinity. I don't have affinity with them, but allow them that conversation so that they can try and understand where we're coming from. And I think this regional mayoral process will give us that fabulous opportunity, will give us that platform to have that discussion and raise awareness and make people understand the agenda, understand where we're coming from.
30 seconds.
Okay. I suppose the other thing I want to say is I think I bring a different perspective, and not just as a Green, because as Greens we bring a different perspective to the whole agenda, but I bring something more. I have, you know, connections outside of Green because of my work. I have connections within the VCS, voluntary and community sector, and I think that gives me a better platform to sell and to discuss those ideas that we feel really, really passionate about. And I would really appreciate your support going forward and giving me that opportunity to be there.
Thank you. Perfect on timing. So, Andrew, you are second and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a councillor. I was first elected 21 years ago to Kirklees Council. I've been elected and re-elected 6 times to the Newsham Ward, and we've won every local election since 1996. That's a record 18 local election wins on the trot. I'm Green Party Energy spokesperson and have been for a few years now. I've done many press, TV and radio interviews speaking on renewable energy, insulation standards and fuel poverty. I drafted and collated the Green Party response to the West Yorkshire devolution proposals that created the West Yorkshire Mayoral Authority. I've been a member of the EU Committee of the Regions for 5 years till the end of 2019, and through that a delegate to 4 of the most recent UN climate talks. And as field organiser for Yorkshire and Humber, I've helped many local parties with their election campaigns, so I know the West Yorkshire region well and the relative strengths of our local parties. But more important than the positions you've held is the use you've made of the huge opportunity of public office. And I'm one of very few Green politicians who's actually initiated and implemented Green Party policies. I successfully proposed the UK's first universally free insulation scheme in Kirklees, and over 50,000 homes were insulated, and the Kirklees Warm Zone scheme won awards and national recognition. I proposed a policy effectively banning fracking in our council area. I successfully established in our local plan that any planning application for fracking would have to demonstrate how it would have net zero impact on climate change. And this approved policy set a precedent for all councils around the country. For the campaign for a green West Yorkshire Mayor, I want to focus on jobs, homes and addressing climate change. On jobs, over 5 years, I want to generate and influence the creation of over 100,000 new green jobs, and this will be in line with the landmark Campaign Against Climate Change report. These jobs will be in renewable energy, sustainable construction, retrofit of buildings, establishing new public transport and active travel networks, and through promoting rich natural environments in and around our communities. But there will be a strong tie-in with education and skills to develop the growing number of qualified workers that we'll need to deliver an ambitious programme. On homes, I'll campaign hard to have the right to buy council housing suspended in West Yorkshire to protect valuable social housing and to help the business case for investment in more council housing. This will also act as a check on house prices at the lower end of the market. I will establish a green building fund that all local authorities in West Yorkshire can access to support the development of homes and other buildings to the Passive House standard. This will reduce carbon emissions, energy bills and fuel poverty. Within the Mayoral Combined Authority, I want to establish a unit focusing on developing the capacity to deliver Passive House developments at scale. And I want to establish a new retrofit fund to improve the energy performance of existing homes, targeting those on the very lowest incomes and seeking to draw in matched funding from energy companies and central government. On climate change, one of my first jobs in office would be to deliver a boost to the ambition of our plan to deliver a zero carbon economy. This would bring the target date forward from 2038 to 2030 in line with the recommendations of the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I'll cease all new road building projects and any projects that supports the expansion of Leeds Bradford Airport. I'll work with green industries on a plan to boost our renewable energy generation capacity across all appropriate technologies and seek to support community-owned and managed renewable energy projects. And finally, when most Labour or Conservative mayors are elected in other parts of the country, shortly afterwards they reveal who their deputy mayor will be. It is usually some party worthy with no democratic mandate at all. I propose that whoever comes second in this election is our nominated deputy and becomes part of a joint green ticket going forward into the mayoral elections. This would strengthen our campaign, widen our potential support, and demonstrate we really believe in democratic accountability in a way that other parties simply don't.
30 seconds.
So please vote for me, Andrew Cooper, as your first choice as Green Party candidate for West Yorkshire Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was great. I got some questions that came in earlier, and I will go through them. I see that only one question has been put in the chat box so far, so do put in some questions. I do have a couple of questions that I will ask if none forthcoming from you.
Video now or later?
Sorry. Oh, thank you. I am very sorry. We have the third one. I have forgotten about that, and I will share that now and play it. So this is Lyn's statement. Andrew or Martin, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see it? Great. Okay, in that case, oh, no, I didn't. Sorry, I've got to stop and start again because I didn't do the audio. Apologies. Let's do that again, this time with you.
Hi everyone, my name's Lyn. Thanks very much for coming along to this meeting. I'm sorry I'm not actually able to join you live in an act of superb
can't see the screen now. Can't see the screen now, Tom.
This is my
it's showing. It's not showing the correct screen.
I will stop that. Okay, I'll start again.
We
I
need to
don't
get.
know what happened there. Just okay, just a second. Right, let's try again. Can you see it now?
Tell you a second. Yep, I can see it at the moment. Yep.
Hi everyone, my name's Lyn. Thanks very much for coming along to this meeting. I'm sorry I'm not actually able to join you live in an act of superb self-sabotage. I've managed to start my campaign by double booking myself. This is my first time at a proper hustings and also my first attempt at recording a video like this, so please bear with me if it's a bit rubbish. One day I shall be all polished and professional, but today is not that day. I suppose I should start by telling you a bit about me. I've been a member of the Green Party in Wakefield for about 5.5 years. I spent the first couple of years pretty inactive, but in the last 3 I've become publicity officer and part of the social media team. Stood in local council elections for Wakefield, and I also stood for the Hemsworth constituency in December's general election. The plan this year was to stand for both town and district council, but obviously that went a bit pear-shaped, so maybe next year. Outside of the Green Party, I've been in admin and office management for about 25 years, working for small, medium and large businesses in various industries, as well as a couple of stints in public sector working for the NHS and as constituency manager to a Yorkshire MP. I'm sure you can all work out that it wasn't a Green MP, but please don't hold that against me. In the last few years, I've somehow sidestepped into doing social media and marketing work for a small family business that builds one-off sustainable homes. I have a partner, 2 kittens and a very elderly dog, and my spare time lately, not that there's much of it, seems to revolve around 2 local community organisations I'm involved with and making masks. So that's me as a person in a very small nutshell. What am I passionate about politically? Well, fairness is a big thing for me, and it's one of the reasons I joined the Greens. We seem to be the only party that genuinely feels that we should give to each according to their needs and take from each according to their means, to coin a very old phrase. That would greatly influence any decisions I had to take as West Yorkshire Mayor. But the things I get really ranty and angry about with respect to West Yorkshire are transport and housing. the first thing I'd want to work on if elected as mayor would be sorting out the absolute shambles that is our transport infrastructure. I've commuted from and to all sorts of areas in West Yorkshire, and none of those journeys were quick, efficient or environmentally friendly. The M62, frankly, is the seventh circle of hell, and the coordination of the various public transport services gives the impression it was designed on the back of a beer mat down the pub on a Friday night after a few too many pints of black sheep. So transport would definitely be the first in my sights. Secondly, housing. To be precise, the lack of it and the poor quality of what we do have. The new planning regulations brought in by the government, combined with the rapid decline in demand for town and city centre retail and office space that we're seeing, mean we are staring down the barrel of even more tiny, cramped, poorly insulated, dreadful quality flats being created in empty units and office blocks. That's no way to decently house people, especially given the lessons of the current pandemic. Not to mention, it's hardly the best way to revitalise our urban areas post-COVID. For me, both of these things tie in with caring for the environment, the reduction of our dependence on fossil fuel-based transport, and equality and fairness. What makes me the right candidate for you to choose to represent you in the mayoral election? That's actually really quite hard to answer without sounding like a pompous prat, but I'll give it a go. I think I'd start with the fact that I'm not really a politician. I'm just a permanently cross resident of West Yorkshire who thinks they could do better than many of the people currently in elected positions. I've got decades of experience in administration and coordination. I know how to work with people at all levels, from ordinary people to CEOs to MPs and ministers. I'm good at developing relationships, and most importantly, I know how to listen and learn from people who are experts in subjects I know nothing about. I'm pretty straightforward. I don't believe in answering a question, avoiding answering a question just because I don't know the answer. I'd rather be honest and say I don't know, but I will find out now you've asked me the question. Right, okay, I think I waffled a bit there, so I will wrap it up quickly. Thank you for listening, assuming you haven't actually nodded off by now. Thanks to Martin and Tom for organising Hustings, and good luck to my fellow candidates, both of whom would make brilliant mayors. Thanks very much. Bye-bye. Hi everyone, my name's Lyn.
It's on loop, sorry about that. Okay, and sorry for forgetting to do that. Thank you very much for reminding me, Martin. So it's over to the questions now, and as I say, I have an order for who will go first for each one, which it's told first. It was randomly generated by Excel for me, so it'll be Hawarun first. And on the first two questions, actually, the first question, which was from Colin Noble, is what we've seen to lack in previous elections and in the EU referendum was any semblance of vision. By vision, I mean what we would actually see in terms of video or still photographs. If you become West Yorkshire Mayor, what is your vision for West Yorkshire, and how would you communicate it successfully to a sceptical and often uninterested electorate? So, I have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I think having a vision is very, very, very important, because it needs to be something that people can identify with. It needs to be something that people can feel that they're part of, or they can become part of. And I think we as Greens, generally we are much more of a visionary than the generic population. And I feel it's really, really important that in a West Yorkshire mayoral position, we have that vision. I think COVID, if nothing else, has brought up that prevention agenda, has brought up the issues around how connected we are to wider world. And for West Yorkshire, it would be really, really important to have that vision so that people can feel themselves aligned to having that connection with the Greens, with the Green candidate, and feel that they can sign up to, i.e. they can vote for us. I want to reiterate all the ideas about the Greens to have around, you know, being West Yorkshire Mayor. But I think my biggest vision would be, and it's something that's impacted on all 5 areas of our region, and that's the economic regeneration. The impact has been massive, and I think I want to, you know, give that message out to say, actually, it doesn't have to be same old, same old. We have a vision. We will make it a sustainable vision, and we will make it work. And look at the sustainability agenda. That is the biggest innovation area. That is the biggest growth sector. That is the biggest. You know, I want to have images that I can actually show, which I haven't got, but it would be fantastic to be able to say that and show, actually, we have a vision. We can see, you know, we cannot carry on the way we have. We cannot go back to what was the same old, same old. We have to go forward, and we have to adapt and, you know, be in with what's the new normal and how that goes forward. So economic regeneration would be around my biggest vision, I think, right at the beginning. Hard to answer in 2 minutes.
Yeah, that was exactly 2 minutes. Well done. Andrew.
What people generally want from politicians is security, and so one of the reasons that I've picked jobs, homes, and climate change as being the 3 themes that I really want to push as part of my mayoral bid is because linking the climate agenda with the jobs that people have and the homes that they live in is really important. Because if people have secure homes, if people have secure jobs, then that's a lot of uncertainty that's out of their lives. And so I really want to have video and images which would reflect that. And I think there's a real opportunity here to do some really strong links with industries and businesses that are sympathetic to our cause. And I would want to be seen out and about, going to those companies, looking at the things that they're doing and the work that they're going about. Majid, during the European election campaign, did a really good video. I was very impressed by what he did there, and I think a promotional video which explains that vision in what is largely going to be an air campaign is vital for us to get out there and use on social media, because social media is going to be a huge part of this campaign, because obviously we've got to reach 5 large metropolitan authorities and get round to those. So making sure that those images, that those videos are quality and are things which will be repeated and retweeted and shared by people is vital.
Okay, thank you. Right, just one thing, when you're asking questions, both candidates will always have an opportunity to answer, so there's no point in telling me that a question is for one candidate. You may, in your mind, have a candidate you particularly want to answer, but both candidates will always be given the opportunity to answer. So the next question is, from Chaz Ball, how will candidates engage effectively with young people? That's very similar to the last one, really, so we'll skip that one now and we'll come back to it. From Anne Forsyth, what 3 characteristics do you think are most important for the people of West Yorkshire in electing a mayor? Which of your characteristics will appeal most to that electorate? And it's Hawarun first again, please.
What 3 characteristics? I think we look at the national politics at the moment, and we know instantly that it's got to be characteristics that we, you know, the honesty, the integrity, and, you know, what we've just talked about, the vision, caring about our population. We have 2.5 million people within our West Yorkshire Mayoral region, and it's really important to have, you know, that understanding that every one of them is very, very important, and every one of them, you know, can actually see themselves connected to the region and see how they fit into that. I think in terms of what characteristics that I have, so I feel I have communication skills, not that I'm portraying them very well right now, but I feel I can actually engage with lots of people. I've done it for 15, 16 years as campaigning for the Greens and being a Green councillor, but I do it as my everyday work in terms of engaging. So I have that natural ability to engage and communicate and be able to, connect with people, whatever region, even if they are the outer limits of Huddersfield or Bradford. So I feel I bring that communication skills. I think I have also empathy. I have understanding. I have worked myself up from
30 seconds.
in a terraced house, so I can understand where people are at. I feel I have that affinity with most of the population. Maybe not necessarily the rich and the famous, but definitely the rest of the population in our region. And I think I've already said, it's really, really important that it's somebody that people can choose and somebody who has integrity, and somebody that they feel they can depend on to do the right thing for the region, not for their family, not for their friends.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're allowed to finish the sentence. Andrew.
I think the three things I would pick out, though I agree with a lot of what Hawarun said, to be honest, are independence. I think it's really important that people want from a mayor. I think track record, so the credibility that comes with that, and relatability in a lot of ways. So in terms of independence, one of the great things we have being the Green Party is that we're not seen as one of the usual parties. We are one of those places where people can feel that we will, even people who might normally vote Labour might vote Green in these particular instances where they think there'll be somebody there who's championing the region. And so people are often with these mayoral contests prepared to take a punt, as it were, on somebody who demonstrates real independence, but also shows that they share their values. And so, we saw, there are lots of examples actually of independent mayors around the country who've been elected. So you look at places like I think it was Sunderland. It was in the northeast certainly, where the guy who had the bananas for school children. He was the mascot for the local football team and dressed as a monkey. But he actually turned out to be a brilliant mayor and got re-elected on one occasion. So track record, I think, is important. You've got to show that you're a serious candidate, that you've got a background, as both
30
me
seconds.
and Hawarun do, as people who are councillors or have been councillors. And relatability. I represent a very diverse ward. I've got white working class. I've got large Muslim populations. It's a very diverse area, and I can relate to a lot of the people there, and they vote for me, which is good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. It was Hartlepool, hence the monkey. Okay, so the next question is from Darren Parkinson. As mayor, how will you get people out of their cars and onto sustainable methods of transport to reduce congestion, air pollution, and help tackle the climate emergency? And Andrew, you're first on this one.
Well, for a start, I would stop all road building projects that are funded by the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. So actually stopping investing in the things which are actually contributing towards climate change and refocusing those and putting those in active travel, putting those into public transport networks. So voting Green would mean a shift of priorities and a shift of where the money goes. And we would look at the transport hierarchy, from walking down to cycling, down to public transport, and ensuring that those are the areas where we put the most efforts into. So that would be an important area. I think also that we've got to demonstrate that where people do use cars, that they've got to be low polluting cars. So I would want to expand clean air zones across as many towns and cities as possible, within the West Yorkshire region, and seek to encourage that, to make sure that that car travel, when it does exist, has got to be of a relatively clean variety.
Okay, thank you. Hawarun.
When you get a tight question like that, it's hard to come up with something different. I suppose my strapline for something like that would be the right choice is the easy choice, and that's what I would want to work with. So that, I think Andrew's already said about, you know, divesting from making, you know, building more roads and actually putting money into infrastructure for walkers and cyclists. I think what COVID had done was, you know, sort of split, or what the recent events have done is split up the population by allowing people to do active travel, encourage, so lots and lots of people are on their bikes, and get people onto cars because they feel, because of what the government says, that public transport isn't safe anymore. So I think there's an element of trying to get that message right again, to making people understand that actually this is a short space of time. People need to go back to public transport and active transport. I'm a keen I want to say I'm a keen cyclist. I used to cycle into work some days, and I think I understand what it's like for people who aren't able to do active travel every day, and it's having that understanding and understanding where people are at, and then using that message to sell, you know, sell the idea, sell the concept, and show. One of the things I did at work, other than, you know, have electric bikes and you know, sort of promote public transport, and this is for a large NHS organisation, was to say, actually, if we all did 1 day of public transport or 1 day of active travel, we can reduce congestion by, you know, 20%. Government legislation isn't going to do that, and we can do this. It is in the hands of public, and I think it's messages like that, making it real, making it relatable, and understanding where people are at, and saying, we understand where you're at, here, let us make it easy for you to make those changes, and making it easy for the population to make those changes. The devolution budget involves transport. Here's our opportunity to make that change.
Thank you.
That noise is going to give me nightmares tonight.
I could change the noise to a worse one. Okay,
No, don't.
I'm going to ask Colin's question. It's Colin Noble's question. If you were the West Yorkshire Mayor and enjoying all the trappings of power, or maybe not enjoying them, and felt you were doing a good job, how would you feel about any proposals for an elected West Yorkshire or Yorkshire-wide assembly to hold you accountable and to share power with you? And that is Hawarun first, please.
I think it's really, really important to be held accountable. We can see nationally what's happening when people aren't being held accountable, and we can't let that happen in West Yorkshire. So I think it would be really important to have an assembly, because as an individual, as one person, you can't understand exactly what's happening with 5 authorities at all the time. You can't be on top of your game, on top of your ball every day of, you know, on every subject matter. So I think it would be really important to have an assembly to almost support and work together, so that you bring in the wider knowledge, the wider skill sets to understand it. And I mean, we don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I can only see it as a positive thing, so that it becomes better and it works for West Yorkshire more than it works for me. I would love to think I will be on my high horse for the whole time I'm elected, and, you know, traveling around and enjoying the good life. But, you know, having been a deputy mayor for a year, I understand that it isn't good. It isn't all good life. It can be incredibly hard work, and it can, you know, be very, very stressful in terms of just trying to deal with all the issues that comes up. We've identified some of the issues, because as Greens, those are the issues that are really concerning us. But there will be stacks of other issues that will come up, such as the Police Crime Commissioner and the issues around, you know, crime and all of that, such as the NHS and issues around associated with health, public health, and the NHS. You know, that's just 2 other areas to mention. So it's not going to, I think it can only be a positive thing to be held accountable, then you are doing the right thing and you're not getting on your high horse and making silly mistakes.
Thank you.
Before the
Andrew.
buzzer as well.
The trappings of power. I mean, it took me about 10 years or so, I think, to actually get used to people calling me counsellor, and so all that deference and all those things which come with people in positions of power really make me feel uncomfortable in many ways, because I've got a very egalitarian perspective on power, and in some ways quite a healthy disrespect for power, and so that's important to me. I've also been a council officer for 17 years, and so that gives you the other side of the perspective, and so I think that's very healthy to be able to sort of see how you actually treat people. It is pretty important. With regard to an assembly, I think if London can have the Greater London Assembly, then why can't West Yorkshire have an assembly? And that's something that throughout the campaign I would want to be stressing. How come London can have an assembly elected by the single transferable vote, and for some reason we're a second-class area? That's not appropriate. And so I would want to ensure that's something that I would push quite a lot during the campaign. Why them and not us? One area I'd like to look at is organising an assembly every year of all the councillors in all West Yorkshire authorities to debate the business plan and budget for the mayoral combined authority. Because for a lot of councils, there's very little visibility for this area. And so I'd want to organise that to enable there to be a proper debate and discussion. So there was some democratic accountability involved with the role of the mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Matt Edwards asks, in order to do well in this election, we will need to appeal to people who might not naturally be drawn to the Green Party. How will you as a candidate appeal to a wider range of communities and voters? And first on this one is Andrew.
Well, I mentioned earlier that the Newsham ward that I represent is actually a really diverse area. We've got areas which are largely white, working class, people who don't normally vote Green, where they enthusiastically do so. And we also have areas like Springwood and Aspley and Highfields in the Newsham ward, which are largely Muslim populations, where we also have some strong support in those areas as well. And the reason that we have that support is because we engage really well with those communities, and so we know people on a one-to-one basis. And I think it's using those sort of that sort of knowledge, those sort of links, which are really important. An organisation that I've had dealings with in the past have been sort of large scale. There's the Mind, which is an organisation of Muslims who are working against hate and Islamophobia in the West Yorkshire area. And I arranged for them to come to Green Party conference and made some strong links there. And so those sort of linkages are actually quite important to go beyond our normal constituency. And so I think often, yeah, obviously your background is important, and I can't get away from the fact that the privilege I have as a white male.
30 seconds.
But I think often it's the way you conduct yourself which is most important, and that hopefully shines through.
Thanks. Hawarun.
I suppose engaging with a wide range of voters. I think what recent events across the country has shown is that there are a wide range of voters. And forever, we've always, the people have always effectively had two choices and gone with a shrug into the polling booth and voted for whoever they've always voted for. And I feel here's our opportunity to actually engage with our population across all 5 authorities. And I feel because of you know, not only being a councillor, but being the Deputy Lord Mayor, I'd had the opportunity to engage with different population right across Bradford District. You know, right from the wealthy, the fabulous Ilkley, right down to, you know, inner city areas who are super output areas. If anybody understands, the super output areas are really poverty driven and have lots of disadvantage. And I think what the other thing I have is lots of experience of engaging with different sectors, and I feel that's really important, because once you are able to engage with different sectors in a professional footing, you access other people who aren't necessarily tuned into politics and actually, you know, make those efforts to find out who they're voting. And I think with my work, I've sort of been right across the region. I've seen what it's like. I know Huddersfield were recently putting a bid in to regenerate the city centre, and I'm thinking, oh my God, that's something new. I need to figure more information out. You know, Wakefield are trying to do stacks of work because so much of the businesses are moving towards the motorway, so they're trying to get more businesses into city centre. And Leeds, of course, we don't want to become Leeds Plus, so it's really important that we engage with Leeds, but not become Leeds Plus. So I feel my communication skills, my engagement skills, both my professional and my counsellor training, all actually gives me the skill set I need to engage with the wider population and hopefully get them to vote for us.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is from Janet Russell. Do you like Andy Burnham's campaign for beds for the homeless in Manchester, or would you help the homeless off the streets in a different way? That's Andrew first, please.
So beds, the beds program by Andy Burnham, and a lot of the work actually that's been done to help the homeless during the beginning of the COVID crisis was really important, and actually some of that was quite transformational. But those programs are in many ways short-term programs, and I think, you know, looking at people who are long-term homeless or rough sleepers as well, because there is a difference, what often we actually need is obviously the homes to live in. So one of the reasons I've talked about stopping the right to buy council housing is that will boost the business plans for councils to develop new council housing, which is actually what we need to get more people who are homeless into accommodation. But we also need to provide support to people who are not used to running their own household, and many tenancies fail where people have actually got off the streets, got into a home, but then been short of beds, of white goods, all those sort of things. One of the projects I've been involved with in Kirklees is the furniture and recycling project, which has actually provided furniture and white goods. I did this in conjunction with the Labour Cabinet, and that's been really successful as a project. Fortunately, I managed to get some Labour members to agree with me that it was important. And the chief aim of that was to stop failed tenancies and stop people who are quite vulnerable from ending up back on the streets. And hopefully that's going to have an impact on the rough sleepers numbers that we've got in the Huddersfield
20 seconds.
Area. Finished.
Warren.
I want to say I like it, and I think the media have picked it up, and we've heard how good it is. It's actually just one element of dealing with homelessness and people who are rough sleepers. And I think it's really important that we understand that actually just organising a bed, as Andy's just said, I feel really bad because we feel like we're just talking about similar sorts of things. Of course, we're in the same party, and there's got to be a reason why we're both in the same party. But I have actually been involved with commissioning services for the homeless people, looking at training, looking at, getting them into jobs, looking at health provision. And because, if you don't have a fixed abode, you can't access a GP practice, you can't, get your medication. you can't go into hospital, so you end up doing A&E and, so much other issues. I've worked with the Bradford Cathedral when they gave one of their buildings away to homeless apartments, to turn into homeless apartments for short-term times. And I think it's actually having an understanding that it isn't one thing, that one bed isn't going to fix it for that homeless person, and it's a much wider issue, and there are lots and lots of mental health issues associated with homelessness, as well as physical violence, where people are unhappy where they were, so they end up in homeless, and sort of health issues where they can't deal with their health problems because they don't have a fixed address and they can't register with the GP practice. So I think I understand where Andy Burnham is coming from. I do have a lot of respect for Andy Burnham and some of the campaigns he's been involved with. But I think we just have a good understanding that it's a much wider issue, and we just need to have much wider support structure in place to deal with homelessness. And that's just one area. There will be other areas that we haven't discussed today.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask a question now, which is, I don't actually believe that either of you or any of the three of you will be elected mayor. What will be the lasting legacy of your campaign? And that's Hawarun first, please.
I'm an eternal optimist. And I really, really, really want to believe that given the right platform, given the right publicity and the right campaign, one of us will get in, any one of us. And I'd be happy if any one of us got in there. But I think the legacy, realistically speaking, I think the legacy will have to be the opportunity and the platform it gives us to discuss the green agenda, to bring it to the forefront. I know internationally, nationally and locally, there are lots of people talking about the green agenda, but actually there are lots and lots and lots of people who aren't talking about it. And I think this campaign will give us that platform. I took a lot of learning from Majid when he did the campaign for the EU elections. And, he was an outlier when he started and he became the favorite. I know my mum wanted to meet him. It was just like, what do you mean you want to meet him? How do you know who he is even? But he did a really good campaign and he gave a platform and a voice. And I feel that we, during this campaign, is our opportunity, and here's our opportunity to bring the climate issues and not just the impact of cars and roads and public transport, but the wider issues around recycling. The NHS is one of the worst polluters in the country. It never comes up, and I'm saying that as an NHS employee, because we value our NHS, but we don't necessarily realise how much of a pollution it's polluting in our area. So actually that's just some of the examples, and I think already I've had a fellow colleague who offered to be my campaign manager if I get chosen, and she's an NHS comms person, and I was like, yes, get in there. But it's it's things like that. It's that platform and opportunity to speak and get the word out there. Yes.
Perfect timing. Okay, Andrew.
I don't necessarily share your gloom, Tom. And like Hawarun, you sort of look at this and think, well, actually, the track record actually shows that if you can grab the imagination of the electorate, then there are some real opportunities out there. Hartlepool was the place where Angus the monkey got elected, but there are other places around the country where independents have got elected as well as mayors. So so it is not impossible. And let's not forget the fact that this is a supplementary vote election. So yes, the first preferences matter, but yes, the second preferences matter as well. So there's a thing here about actually having a wide appeal across the population, and so making the most use of the fact that that people are going to have a second vote is vital, I think. What's the lasting legacy? I think the great thing is getting the green agenda out there and getting them to talk about the issues that we talk about. jobs, homes, climate change. Those areas are things that where we're really strong, and actually they're really weak. And so I think we should make sure that we get our policies across as well as we possibly can. So that's important. Another thing, I've suggested that we have a joint ticket where we have a nominated mayor and a nominated deputy mayor. Now, one of the things about that is, as I've said, is that the other parties usually appoint them a party worthy after the election. I think actually having a joint ticket for the election would be incredibly powerful and something that would set down a challenge to the other parties.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next question is from Martin Hemingway. Local authority areas trade internationally. Leeds City Council, for example, has long had links to China. This raises human rights issues, as does trading with other countries. How will you project the human rights policies of the Green Party in the role of mayor? And first off, please, Andrew.
Well, we've got to be clear right from the very start that human rights are important to us, and that somehow that economics is not one of those things which is somehow separate, and that we'll put economics on one side and that we will ignore human rights. That we've got to be clear about where we stand right from the very beginning on that. I think there's another aspect to this as well, is that if we're talking about resilience being important as opposed to economic growth, then the more local trade we can do within Yorkshire and Humber, and indeed within the UK, that helps having a more resilient economy by keeping that money flowing within the country and within the region, particularly if we possibly can. So doing the right thing could also be, for human rights purposes, can also be the right thing economically, and I think we've got to make that case quite strongly. In terms of economic links, I think having a strong Yorkshire and Humber office dealing with trade within Brussels, looking at links with the EU, would also be important because of the standards that we often share with European Union authorities is important. So European Union, more links with within the region, and where we can't do that within the country, and making sure that people understand that that resilience is what we're about, not growth.
Okay, thank you. Hawarun.
I think we in the Green Party, we know exactly where we stand when it comes to human rights. And as Green Mayor, once we're elected, I know that would, be at the forefront of our, ongoing decision making at every point, and it's really, really important that is so, because that is what we believe in. It's also looking at ethical trading, looking at, like Andrew just said, the local trading, building our local economy, looking at national, what we can't buy in the Yorkshire region, we can, look at nationally, we can look at the outer limits of Scotland, we can look at Wales, we can actually, and we can support our own, and I think it'll become more important that we start supporting our own businesses within the country once we have Brexit next year. And if there is a tariff on everything, then it's not going to be viable to trade outside. We will have to look internally, so it will become more important to actually support our businesses. As a 5 authority, we have a substantial budget. We will have fantastic power to negotiate and actually insist on our beliefs, and insist that the company who we buy from feeds into those ethicals, those human rights, and sort of fair pay and all of those other things. We can do that with a budget like this, and
30 seconds.
with a budget that size, I should say. And I think, here's our opportunity to do that. Actually, if we did it, you can appreciate that all the other metro mayoral authorities will be turning around thinking, if they can do it, we can do it. And I think we as Greens, we need to set that precedent. We need to show that innovation. We need to show that progression and progressive thinking, and say we can do things differently. My tagline has been better is possible. We can make it better.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a quick check. I never saw the invite to this. So are we supposed to finish at 7:30 or 8?
You said 8:30.
Did I? Well,
Tom,
and
get some questions quickly.
I've got a few more questions, but some of them are a little bit repetitive. So if other people have more questions, that will be great. The next one I've got is from Janet Russell, and it's, what other important things would you grapple with besides from the housing issue with passive house standards and public and active transport issues to help our resilience in West Yorkshire to climate change? And it's Andrew again first, please.
Okay, so looking at resilience, I mentioned earlier on about the importance of trading within within the Yorkshire Number region, and looking at local production for local needs has been something that we would want to promote. So that means looking at things like some of the contracts that we're putting forward, and looking at those contracts and seeing what we can do to ensure that local suppliers are the ones that are used, and that we employ as much local labour as we possibly can from the Yorkshire Number region. So that's one way. Another way is, I think one of the things we should seek to promote much more of, and they've had a bit of a checkered history, but I think there's no particular reason for us not to look at, is local currencies, and look what we can do to establish local currencies within areas. So we've had the Bristol pound, which worked well for quite a while, but has had some problems recently. And so looking at local currencies and see what we can do to actually promote more of that inter-economy work. And I do remember that some Bristol council staff, and indeed the Bristol mayor, the independent Bristol mayor, was paid in Bristol pounds, and so maybe if we had a West Yorkshire pound, whoever's elected as mayor could actually be paid in West Yorkshire pounds. So
30 seconds.
so the money that they were spending themselves could only be spent on businesses which were owned or managed within the West Yorkshire area.
Okay, thank you. Hawarun.
I don't want to have a different answer. I want to support what Andy says. I think it's really, really, really important that we support local businesses, and make it more resilient. And how are we going to do that? If every one of our local authorities spent their money within the local authority, or just within Yorkshire would be a very different area. What they generally tend to do is go for the cheapest bid. What you get with the private sector is they will put in the cheapest bid, and then they'll come back and say, oh, well, we can't really afford it. We need you to give us a bit more. And I've had experience of doing that, as in my contracting and commissioning role within the NHS. And I think that's something that we can actually really look at. And once we've got the 5 authorities thinking together, imagine the buying power they would have. Imagine the difference they can make to the local economy. Imagine the difference they can make to the local businesses. I want to give you an example. So our local hospital, the Bradford Royal Infirmary, they get their food delivered every morning from Chester in Wales, in vacuum-packed chiller lorries. That comes in every morning to be reheated and served to the patients. That is not good food. Look at the amazing businesses we have in Bradford, fantastic food quality, and yet they went with the cheapest food bid that came through. £21 million every year spent on daily delivery of chiller cabinet food. And that is repeated right across the region, right across the country. And that's just one example. So actually we can make a difference. And once we get 5 authorities thinking together, working together, and making those large scale changes, it makes a very, very different region.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question, and I've got Hawarun down first for that, is from Caroline. In terms of road plans, what are your ideas to improve public transport, cycling and walking?
I suppose we've sort of previously mentioned about stopping the road building. Andy specifically said we will stop the road building. I think it's repurposing, it's prioritizing, it's making people make the right choice, the easy choice. One of the reasons why most people say they don't cycle is because they don't feel safe on the roads. You know, my husband is a commuter cyclist. On more than one occasion, he has been knocked off his bike. I only cycle on safe cycleways, but you know, that means that I'm limited to certain routes that I feel confident about, and that those are the only routes I would cycle in. And that's just an example. I can walk everywhere, but do most people walk? Where is that big campaign we had a few years back where we talked about people making half-a-mile journey on foot rather than driving there? And yet it is the easy option for people to get in their car and drive. So actually it's making it easy, making it pleasant, and making it okay for people to use public transport, to use, you know, be active in their transport, and actually make it nice. I mean, what are those high streets where they've blocked off the road and, you know, put seatings in them and allowed restaurants and takeaways and cafes to spill over? They're different worlds, and we look at them with envy, thinking, how amazing is that? How much does that work? And actually, can we build on that? Can we make it easier for the restaurant, for the local areas to say, we're going to narrow this road, or we're going to repurpose this road to make it
30
nicer
seconds.
for us to use, other than just for cars. Cars have had the priorities. Highways department right across the region always think of cars when they're designing a new area or a new, you know, path or a new journey plan. And yet, you know, we need to get out of it. So I think it's really, really important that we give people the right choices to make, but also make it easy for them to make those choices. And I appreciate that I haven't given you specific examples, but they're so widely.
Okay, thank you. Andrew.
So I think actually working with the transport users, looking at the people who already use public transport, who already are cyclists, who may have difficulties or already walk into town centres perhaps, and see what would make their lives easier. What are the things that so talk to those people and ask them about what changes they'd like to see to improve their experience of using their chosen methods. After that, we've got to look at those people who we're actually trying to change, those people we want to take out of cars, those people who we want to use other forms of transport, that modal shift that we need to happen. And so talk to them about the things which would make that a more pleasant experience and a more viable option. So talking to people and listening to them is vital with any of these things. And getting it wrong often is when you don't do that. I'm a big enthusiast for electric bikes. I intend to get an electric bike, which helps fat old people like me use bikes in hilly areas, and so I'm quite keen that we do that. I think electric bikes democratize cycling, and we'll get more people using that. And by doing that, we give more power to cyclists because more people are doing it, and so that way we might see more investment in greenways. And I would like to see greenways. There's about 3 being proposed around Huddersfield.
30
and I'm
seconds.
sure it's true in other areas. So I'd like to see more of that. But also walking routes with trees along it. I think avenues, areas with lots of foliage around it makes a horrible walk a nice walk. And it might not cut the time down, but it makes it feel better. And making things feel better is vital, I think, particularly with walking.
Okay, thank you. So on a completely different subject, question from Colin. How would you try to expedite economies of scale if controlling the police budget and the fire and rescue budget? And I will add to that, or would you defund the police? And Hawarun, sorry, on that first, please.
I think, don't we already have a police and crime commissioner in the region? I thought we already had one who is voted in. So my assumption is if that person is already there, they might not be happy if I turned up and said, right, we're going to defund you. Colin is shaking his head, so maybe I've got it wrong. Maybe it was something I'd read somewhere. But I think it's that there isn't a magic cure for anything. If there is an issue, we need to understand what the issue is. and understand what needs to change to make that issue better. And I think, you know, it's not, the police and crime isn't an area, it's not an area of expertise for me. So I wouldn't want to actually say, I'll do this, I'll do that, or I'll do, just because I don't know enough about it to, you know, make those comments. But, you know, the one thing that we can all do is actually find out what the issues are, find out what needs to change and look at changing it. But I'm pretty sure the funding is central government. It's not something that the West Yorkshire Mayor will have, which is, you know, the funding for the police or the fire service. And I'm pretty sure, you know, I wouldn't want to make that comment just because it's not an area. You know, I've worked with the Police Crime Commissioner when we looked at alcohol and drugs, you know, issues across our, you know, district, but it's not, you know, it's not something that I don't feel I can answer that with much confidence, other than just think actually it's an area of learning. That will be my first priority, is to understand if they're in my remit, to go and find out what it is that needs to happen and find out what needs to change. I won't go into much more detail on that, but there will be other things I could have said.
Okay, thank you. Andrew.
So under the devolution proposals, there will be a deputy mayor who's going to be responsible for policing. So eventually, after maybe about 3 years, the Police and Crime Commissioner will cease to exist, and that will come under the Mayoral Combined Authority Office. And so yes, the mayor will have a considerable amount of power over police budgets. And bizarrely, they'll be less accountable under these proposals, but we're having an appointed deputy mayor for policing than under current arrangements. So the areas that I would look at are purchasing. You know, how's purchasing done by the police? The sort of things that they look at. Sharing services and specializations. I mean, one particular area I've looked at where there is a specialization which needs more support is the off-bike unit, which chases, if you like, a lot of these kids who are on trail bikes that wind a lot of folks up on those sort of areas. So that's an area where we need to put some support in. There is a bit of a problem when you talk about defunding the police. A lot of the police feel they're defunded anyway, and so though I obviously I hear the thing from the US about defunding the police, I think what actually we want is to have such a good relationship with the police and such confidence in the police that we want to fund them, and so that's got to be an ambition that we have, is that we work with the police. We've actually funded the police to have electric bikes in the Newsham ward, so their staff are able to get up and down the hills. So we've put funding into the police to help them do their job more effectively.
Okay, thank you. So the next two, I'm going to take two questions together here. One's from Barry Cusack. Given that it is impossible to gain power and influence without mass appeal, and as the Green Party appears to be a white middle-class party to many, what would you do to ensure that we properly engage with working-class voters and the politically disengaged? And from Matt Edwards, as Greens, we tend not to be best at communicating our ideas. How will you ensure that our campaign is accessible? And we could actually add in Chaz Balls is, how will candidates engage effectively with young people? Is it the message or the medium that will succeed best? And it's Hawarun again, please.
That's three long questions. I suppose it boils down to what we're already talking about. It's that engagement. It's that having that mass appeal, and it's, you know, taking learning from others who've done that. And I think one of us has already said that, and the social media is going to be really, really crucial. I think young people are already hooked up to the green agenda, already understand what the issues are and what the concerns are. And it's a matter of, you know, they almost get the sort of desensitized to the whole thing as they get older, as they get into jobs and start worrying about other things. And I think the current generation of young people are much more savvy and much more environmentally aware. So it's actually getting them hooked onto politics is going to be our challenge. It's getting them not being in apathy of politicians. I mean, what are they exposed to now? What have they been exposed to over the last few weeks? Do we blame them for not thinking, I'm not even going to bother voting this, and so actually it's giving them something to believe in, something that they feel they can connect with, and engaging with that. And I think that similar principles could apply for people, generic population, who are very, very, sort of anti-politics because they're really fed up with where things are at now, as well as people who aren't normally engaged with the green agenda because they don't feel they're, it speaks to them. And I think we as Green Party have, we generally just tend to fall into a niche sort of marketing where we hook on to. So the big publicity that came out of Sheffield was the trees, and you sort of think we're not just about trees. We're not bunch of tree hugging hippies. We worry about everything else. We have policies on all of life, from birth right down to death. And actually it's actually getting that message out there, and having a personable person who will go out there, who can hook up and connect with people, and actually just spend a bit of time going across the region and getting to know the people and allowing people to get to know us as well.
Thank you. Andrew.
So we've got to look at the mediums and we've got to look at the message when we're trying to get mass appeal. And we've got to recognise, of course, that we are a small party, and so look at how we can best appropriately do that. In terms of social media, I think a certain amount of our budget will be about pushing hard on social media. The London campaign is putting a lot of money into boosted Facebook posts and things like that for Sian Berry's campaign from there. And so I think we can learn from some of the techniques that they're using there. In terms of the message, I think we've got to make ourselves relevant to people's everyday lives. What we've got to talk about has got to be things that people care about what their everyday concerns. So jobs, homes, climate change. So I think we've got to speak directly to people and say to them, actually, if you let me, there is more chance that you will have a stable job. Actually, not a worthwhile job, a job that you can build a life upon, one that you'll feel proud to be doing, addressing the biggest threat that we have, climate change. And that you'll have a home. You're more likely to have a home that is a stable home, one that you won't be thrown out of at the whim of a landlord. And so having that sort of making sure that we're building thousands of houses to very high standards where people will have low energy bills, where they can live for the rest of their lives, I think that's incredibly powerful. And to speak to young people about the fact that, crikey, we are serious about climate change. Forget all the nonsense you hear from other parties. We're going to do this properly, and we can show you convincingly that we will achieve a low energy future for you by 2030.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Janet Russell, and it is, what ideas do you have for the care and preservation of our moorlands, uplands in general, for flood preservation and as carbon sinks? And I think it's Andrew first now.
So obviously the moorlands are to a large extent an environment which is maintained in its current position to facilitate shooting of grouse, and so I think we've got to recognise that, and obviously there's implications of that. The implications of it are because of the mass burning that we end up with flooding in lower valleys, and so people's homes and businesses are being flooded, basically to protect the business of toffs who go out shooting animals for pleasure. So I think that basically that business has got to stop, and it's not a social good, it's a social ill. And so I think we've got to change opinion on that, and we've got to look at what is better to use that land for. Where possible, I would like to extend tree planting. Those areas could be areas where we want to do mass forestation as much as we possibly can on those hills, as part of our carbon mitigation programs. So looking at that as a future use, I think we would want to get a large public debate on the ownership of land and the value of it. If we look at the value of that land in its current form, perhaps we ought to be changing the taxation regime on that land. If it's not being used for social good, should it be taxed more? And should the owners of that land be taxed more for using it for a purpose which does not benefit the environment or the wider community? I think it does. And so looking at things like land value tax and appropriate and dealing with it in that way would be something that we could do.
Okay, thank you very much. Hawarun.
I won't reiterate what Andrew just said. As I think with moorlands, we know what the key issue is the fact around grouse shooting. We have a real issue in Ilkley, our Ilkley moors, because we can't. Half of it is owned by a private company, and the other half is owned by council. And the people who give planning permission for the shootings to take place and are the ones who justify it to themselves and to the companies, and they're the ones who make that decision to allow that to happen. And I think it's actually, you know, understanding it's the local councils who allow that to happen. And they always say, oh well, it's businesses and it's maintaining and income generation. But actually, as Andy just said, you know, if the impact is flooding at the valley bottom, as we've had in the Aire Valley and the River Aire a few years back, I think it was 2015 when we had the last big flooding. That's just one example. And I think people need to be making that connection. And I think part of our remit is to make the connection from a decision to the reaction and the impact it has on individuals. I always think that actually people make decisions based on themselves, but don't realize the impact can often go around their houses and land on their doorstep. For example, the Ilkley Moor and the decision to carry on the grouse shooting there, and then the flooding happened, and it was, you know, one of the decision-making councillors who was impacted with the flooding. And well, you sit back and you say, well, actually, you decided, you know, you had the chance to stop that happening, and you chose not to take it. And I think that sort of situation occurs systematically right across the board at different, you know, questions, different areas. And different agendas, and it's people making that connection between what they decide to do or what they decide to vote for and how it impacts on them, because people don't often do that. And I think that will be part of that remit to make those connections.
Okay, thank you.
Also say there's the peatlands as well, carbon sinks, and we need to look at maintaining the peatlands. Sorry.
I'll let you off. Whether the other people here will is another matter. So Bill and Sean asked, how would you encourage subsidiarity in the region? And that's Hawarun first, please.
Sorry, can I have a bit of clarification, Bill and Shan, what you mean by it?
Pushing decision-making down to the lowest possible level.
I think it just feels like there's that many levels of decision making. So we have the local parish council and town council, then we have the local councillors, as in the, you know, the authority councils, and now we have, you know, the regional body, which will be hopefully the mayor, and I think the decision making is going down, but it almost feels like it takes away from responsibility. So when, you know, somebody in town council makes the decision, is that, you know, we wash our hands off them, saying, well, they've made the decision, let them do that, and it sort of seems to go around the system a bit. And I think accountability, and right at the beginning I answered one of the questions about accountability and being held to account, and I feel that needs to be really important at every level, so that people who make decisions aren't making the, you know, are making the decisions for the betterment of the local population and not necessarily based on themselves or what they want out of it. I've recently what's been happening nationally just really makes me worry as to where we are as a nation. And I feel it's really important that local decisions are made locally, but there should be an accountability of it. And it should be transparent as to how they make those decisions at every level, regardless of what level they're
30 seconds.
making them. Yeah. I don't know what else I could say on that one.
Okay, thank you. Andrew.
So there's not clarity, I don't think, in the proposals we got for the West Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority about whether or not powers are coming up from local authorities to the Mayoral Combined Authority or down. And so one of the things we'd want to establish right at the very beginning is that the Mayoral Combined Authority will take no powers away from councils. And so that will be just a principle that we would establish. There are some things under the proposals which we really need to be careful about. There are mayoral development areas and mayoral compulsory purchase powers which are going to be available. And what they say is that, oh, those won't be done without consultation, without the agreement of the councils. What they actually mean is without the council leaders or the council's cabinet. And so one of the things I would say is that if there is going to be a mayoral development area or mayoral compulsory purchase, that would be not in terms of bringing money into those areas from the mayoral pot. That would be done only where there is a vote of the whole council to decide to support that. So you would make sure that there was a debate of the whole council, because a lot of these regional decisions happen without the involvement of elected members from a ward level. It's usually 3 or 4 councillors in the cabinets. So making sure that's clear. So the thing that we do want to see more of is more powers coming down from central government to the Mayoral Combined Authority, which is one of the reasons why I've been pushing the idea of getting the right to buy suspended in the West Yorkshire area as one of the powers we would like to have in the Mayoral Combined Authority.
Okay, thank you. So the next question, well, Colin is clearly typing one, is from Janet Russell, and it is, what other important things will you grapple with besides from the housing issue with passive house standards and public and active transport issues? No, we had that one.
We've had that one.
We've had that one, sorry. It's, what would be your first, also from Janet Russell, what would be your first project as West Yorkshire Mayor? And it's Warren first, please.
I think the first project, I haven't really thought that far ahead, but if I was sat there tomorrow, I think I'd want to, first of all, talk to all 5 regions and understand where they're at, but actually, and I feel really important right now, and basing my answer on where we're at this moment in time, would be, sort of regeneration at whatever level. And it's just because every area has been so negatively impacted on in job creation in the job market. So I'd want to look at the green regenerate, sort of how we can make it more green, how we can look at innovative ideas, and how we can actually invest in regeneration so that we're getting the green infrastructure in place, but actually also getting people into jobs. And once people are in jobs, they're much more secure. The other things can come after, so the housing, the education. But I think, yeah, I would settle with something around regeneration, something around getting city centres. I don't want to sort of get city centres back into what they were before, but actually look at how city centres can be made better spaces, made greener spaces, and make it much more sociable space, so that people coming back into the city centres, people, we're trying to hook back into regenerating each of our cities, feel much more connected and feel, much more empowered into coming out and, being part of society and taking part in regenerating. Sorry, I feel like I've waffled a bit, and I'm sorry I've just gone off on one. but maybe I can answer another time.
Okay, thank you. Andrew.
My first job would be to get the Mayoral Combined Authority to produce a new plan to deliver a zero carbon economy by 2030, and not the 2038 that's currently the target. 2038 is still a tough target. Let's be clear about that. But it's tougher because of the choices that are being made by the West Yorkshire Combined Authority now, which will be taken over by obviously the Mayoral Combined Authority. So the decisions that have been made to invest in Leeds Bradford Airport in terms of transport, the support they're giving to the expansion of those plans threatens the very targets, the 2038 target that they've got. And a study by Leeds University has backed that up and said that they're just going to make life even more difficult for us. So there's no halfway houses with this. We've got to be very clear that if you're going to try and achieve a zero carbon economy, then you invest in the right things. And so refocusing the plan, getting us another 8 years, will bring us in harmony with the IPCC targets, the ones that got us into that highlighted the climate emergency in the first place. So a budget.
30 seconds.
So a budget and a plan which addresses the climate emergency is my number one first job if I get elected as Mayor of West Yorkshire.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, and I've just had a prompt from somebody else, but I've been thinking it anyway. I think we've had a long time. We're all fairly tired. You worked very hard. Many thanks. So you each have 2 minutes to have a final summing up of anything you want to say. And I said it would be Andrew first and then Lyn. So Andrew.
I think there's a great opportunity to get our message across here. I think the Green Party always says things which others won't say. So I'm very enthusiastic about the opportunity to do that during this West Yorkshire Mayoral campaign. So please support me as your number one candidate. But what I would say is that we have a great opportunity to have a joint ticket for whoever comes first and whoever comes second. And I think that could be incredibly powerful and enable us to have a much greater reach than we would have otherwise. So I would propose that if we have our first and second choices, they become our mayor and deputy mayor candidates, and that's something that I think would really add something additional to the Green campaign for West Yorkshire Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, Hawarun, I was reading. Okay, it said Lyn. Apologies. It's of course you, Hawarun. Very, very sorry.
It's fine. I wasn't offended at all. I suppose what I want to say is I think with the campaign, I think all three of us are genuinely very, very passionate about the green agenda and definitely want to make a change, and this campaign will give us that opportunity and the platform to have those discussions and bring the green agenda and the green thoughts and green thinking and green innovation to the forefront to the public. I think I suppose going back to the personality, what I want to say is what I bring to this campaign as a person, isn't necessarily a fully fledged 100% savvy political person, but I think what I bring is energy and enthusiasm, communications, being able to connect with people, and actually having a strategic view of all of our authorities, understanding where we're at the moment. And it's really, really important that we have our green agenda, but actually we have to work with where we're at the moment. Things that are already there aren't going to suddenly disappear overnight once we get a green mayor, and I think it's working with that and slowly making those changes. Andy has already identified the time frame, and it's really, really important we hold on to time frame. We don't wait for the national government, and we don't wait for the local current thinking in terms of waiting for something else to happen. I think we bring that energy, we bring that enthusiasm, and we say, right, we're here to make a change. Let's make those changes, and let's make changes for the better of our population.
Yep.
Thank you for all your support.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, especially to Andrew and Hawarun, but also to Lyn, the three candidates. Thank you all for turning up. Thank you very much for your questions. It's been very interesting. I hope it's helped you make up your minds who you're going to vote for. I will be, as somebody not in West Yorkshire, watching with great interest from the outside, and good luck to whoever is elected. I hope that I am wrong and that one of you does become the first mayor of West Yorkshire. So thank you all, and that was really interesting.
Thank you to you.